My friends, settle with me for a while and let an older voice share some reflections about what I have observed in those people who seem to carry a certain mental sharpness, a capacity for insight that many call high IQ, though from a Stoic viewpoint, it might be better described simply as keen, disciplined thinking. I wish to speak to you from a very human place, not as an academic offering bullet points on cognition, but as someone who has walked many roads and discovered, through Stoic reflection, that intelligence is not merely an inborn trait, but often the result of particular habits shaped by curiosity, reason, and moral intention. I have seen these habits in a wide range of individuals, some with formal accolades, others with none. Over time, I came to see how these same habits echo the teachings of ancient philosophers, who insisted that our minds could be cultivated or left to drift, with profound consequences for our peace of mind and our effectiveness in daily life. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Did you know only 15% of you watching are subscribed? If you find these insights valuable, join our community and tap the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. Let me begin by admitting that in my younger days, I equated intelligence with how quickly one could solve puzzles or recall facts. I believed that if you were not gifted with a certain mental spark from birth, you were destined to remain average. Yet, as I matured, observing people across all sorts of vocations, craftsmen, thinkers, teachers, entrepreneurs, I realized that so-called brilliance often flowed from purposeful mental habits rather than raw intellect alone. Some of the most agile minds I encountered belonged to individuals who had systematically refined their way of learning and thinking, not necessarily to show off, but to handle life's complexities with grace. It was not about IQ scores on paper. It was about an approach to knowledge, problem-solving, emotional composure, and moral reflection. I speak from a Stoic vantage, but do not mistake that for a cold or detached stance. Real Stoicism brims with a grounded humanity, reminding us that we share a communal bond, that we can support each other in elevating our mental and ethical capacities, and that adversity or mistakes should not crush us, but serve as catalysts for growth. In Stoic writings, you might find countless reminders that our judgments, our daily choices, shape who we become. When I look at individuals labeled high IQ, I see that they too practice, knowingly or not, this Stoic principle. They examine their assumptions, remain open to correction, and anchor themselves in a calm readiness to adapt. If we adopt these ways, these habits, I believe we can each become sharper and more resilient, forging a sense of intellectual clarity that not only betters our personal endeavors, but also alleviates the stress that so often accompanies modern living. But let me not rush. Perhaps you wonder if these habits are truly accessible to you, or if you are somehow stuck with your current mental patterns. Stoicism assures us that while we cannot control external factors like age, educational opportunities, or inherited traits, we can mold our judgments and direct our energies. Even if you feel weighed down by old routines or by a sense that you are not that smart, Stoicism stands ready to help you refine your approach. We can, step by step, dismantle illusions or time-wasting impulses that prevent our mind from blossoming. The men and women I have encountered who radiate that rare brightness do not generally rely on random bursts of talent. They cultivate systematic curiosity, they approach conflicts with measured reason, and they do not flinch from acknowledging ignorance. Let me illustrate each of these points in a meandering narrative, as an older man might, weaving stories from memory rather than bulleting them in a strict order. After all, Stoicism is not a mechanical system, but a lived philosophy that breathes in everyday acts. Let us begin with a habit I find universal among those we call bright. They never cease to question. When I was younger, I knew a blacksmith who, despite lacking formal schooling, seemed able to dissect problems of geometry or economics or local politics with ease. The secret was that he incessantly asked why or how, not in a childishly naive sense, but with a calm sincerity that refused to accept superficial answers. If he overheard a snippet about the town's budget shortfall, he wanted to grasp the root cause, see the broader pattern. If he encountered a new metal alloy for forging, he studied its properties, tested it in small increments. Over years, that quiet, persistent questioning built up a reservoir of integrated knowledge. Stoicism often references the idea that nature is rational, and that we do ourselves a disservice when we take appearances at face value. By embracing the habit of questioning, we embody that Stoic principle, refusing to let complacency or the fear of looking ignorant block our path to deeper understanding. And yes, at first others might label you as overly inquisitive or a know-it-all if you push too far, but a Stoic approach ensures you do so politely, with humility, seeing each question as a step toward truth rather than a contest of wits. Next, I recall that these so-called high IQ folks demonstrate a willingness to place themselves in situations where their illusions can be shattered. They actively seek challenges, not to prove their superiority, but to reveal where their knowledge is lacking. From a Stoic standpoint, this is akin to negative visualization, where you occasionally imagine or even engineer scenarios that test your mental limits. Why? Because in Stoic thought, adversity clarifies what we must improve. The mind that never confronts robust challenges remains stagnant. If, for instance, you cling to a single domain of expertise, never venturing beyond it, your intellect might atrophy in other arenas. By contrast, stepping into new fields or hobbies, perhaps learning a foreign language, picking up coding, delving into historical analysis, forces your brain to rewire, to accommodate fresh demands. Each misstep or confusion encountered in this process becomes fodder for growth, aligning with Stoic acceptance that it is through hardship we refine virtue and resilience. Indeed, men I've known who exhibit strong intellect rarely remain content with a single comfortable niche. They treat the mind like a muscle that must be exercised from multiple angles. This mindset aligns with Stoic advice to push beyond your comfort zone, acknowledging that it may be humbling at first, but ultimately fosters long-term strength. Hand in hand with that approach is a certain humility about how little one truly knows. In Stoicism, we often caution against the arrogance of believing we have attained final wisdom. So too, men of strong intellect rarely posture as if they have all the answers. Instead, they keep an open posture of listening. They do not equate changing their mind with weakness. Rather, they see it as a sign of intellectual health to update beliefs in light of new evidence. If they are proven wrong, they adapt. No melodrama, no meltdown. They do not treat the correction as a blow to their ego, for their ego is invested in the pursuit of truth, not in protecting a vanity-laden facade of infallibility. That stance is deeply Stoic. We measure ourselves not by how often we are right, but by how earnestly we strive to align with reality and moral reason. If someone points out a flaw in your argument, Stoicism says you should thank them, for they have helped dispel an illusion. The net result is less stress, because you no longer live in fear of being exposed as mistaken. You welcome refinement, you actively look for it. Over time, this kills off that anxious compulsion to appear perfect, freeing mental energy to do real creative or analytical work. People might call you brilliant, but from the Stoic angle, it's simply the product of humility, an attribute that ironically fosters keener insight. We must also speak of how these individuals manage to sustain mental clarity amid the frenzied pace of modern living. In Stoicism, we emphasize the partition of control, focusing on what truly lies in our sphere, letting go of externalities that do not. Men of advanced intellect often apply a similar principle to information overload. They do not try to track every sensational story or follow every trivial update from 1,000 feeds. They tune their mental radar to filter out noise, prioritizing what they can effectively act upon or deeply learn from. This might mean unsubscribing from multiple channels that yield no real knowledge, or setting designated times to check news in a measured fashion. By not letting superficial chatter hijack their attention, they preserve mental bandwidth for deeper thought. This Stoic boundary helps them remain calm because they do not carry the world's burdens in their head. They remain informed enough to act responsibly, but do not indulge endless speculation about issues beyond their sphere. It is the same principle that Stoicism uses to reduce stress. Do not attempt to shoulder what is not yours to solve. Indeed, if you replicate this approach, limiting how random distractions invade your day, giving your best focus to tasks that matter, you might find a surprising increase in mental acuity and a reduction in the sense of being frazzled or behind. Over weeks, that consistent curation of input spares you from mental fragmentation, letting your Stoic discipline blossom. Let me relate an anecdote about a colleague who had a knack for absorbing complex information swiftly and translating it into practical strategies. People assumed he had a photographic memory. But in conversation, he revealed that he simply curated his reading meticulously and took short, thorough notes after each chunk, summarizing the essence. He avoided random scanning of topics. Instead, once he committed to learning a subject, he immersed himself systematically, ignoring side channels that might lure him off track. That Stoic-like discipline, knowing which content to consume and how to process it, fostered a sense of mental order. His mind was not drowned by half-digested bits of irrelevant data. He culled the essential, letting everything else pass. The result was what outside observers labeled incredible mental efficiency. But from a Stoic lens, we might see it as a deliberate exercise of focusing on what's truly in your domain, the content you choose to engage with, and letting the rest remain background noise. That approach, though simple, is an understated hallmark of many so-called intellectual heavyweights. If you adopt it, you might quickly see results in how quickly you can master new material or reduce the anxiety of feeling constantly behind. Yet another habit stands out. Men of high IQ who embrace a Stoic worldview are not paralyzed by the fear of being overshadowed by someone else's brilliance. They do not view knowledge as a zero-sum game. On the contrary, they often collaborate or trade insights freely, recognizing that two minds allied in reason can surpass what each might accomplish alone. Stoicism fosters this cooperative spirit by reminding us that humans are social beings tasked by nature to help one another flourish. If your mental orientation is Stoic, you see no shame in acknowledging that a peer or mentor has deeper expertise in a certain field. Instead of feeling threatened, you approach them with respectful curiosity, gleaning from them, perhaps sharing your own strengths in return. That synergy dissolves the stress born of competition or envy. Indeed, Stoics caution that envy is a destructive emotion, sapping mental clarity and moral peace. The high IQ men who exemplify Stoic virtue remain free from that envy. They stand confident in their own domain, open to cross-pollination with others, accepting that knowledge is infinite and that we grow faster by acknowledging where others can guide us. If you sense envy creeping up, if you find yourself resentful that someone else seems more adept, Stoicism would have you reflect. Does their skill truly undermine my capacity to learn, or does it highlight a gap I can address? Reframing it thus transfigures envy into motivation, spurring rational self-improvement rather than bitterness. Allow me to reflect on how Stoic positivity might address the gloom that sometimes haunts intellectual pursuits. Some bright individuals slip into existential dread or cynicism, seeing the world's complexities, injustices, or uncertainties. Stoicism counters that cynicism with an acceptance that while many external events remain beyond our power, we can shape our moral engagement. If large-scale problems trouble you, Stoicism says you can undertake local solutions or maintain personal integrity in how you navigate them. That acceptance, ironically, can quell the sense of overwhelming despair, allowing your intellect to remain constructive. Men who cultivate these Stoic-laced habits often remain unshaken even when faced with bleak data about society or personal adversity. They do not become naive optimists, but they do focus on what can be done, giving them a sense of purpose rather than succumbing to helpless gloom. Over time, that purposeful posture radiates outward, lowering their stress level and inspiring others to also engage rather than lament. From a Stoic vantage, you might apply a daily question: am I letting the scope of a problem paralyze me, or am I directing my efforts where they can produce tangible benefit? If you see that you are sliding into cynicism, Stoicism prompts a pivot to concrete action or acceptance, whichever is apt. That pivot keeps your mind in motion, not in despair, sustaining the intellectual spark needed for enduring progress. A key Stoic principle that resonates with high IQ living is the notion of living in harmony with nature, which can be interpreted as living in alignment with your rational capacity and moral sense. Men with robust intellect typically structure their environment, both mental and physical, to support ongoing clarity. For example, they might keep their workspace orderly, not out of obsessive tidiness, but to reduce friction and help the mind remain calm. Or they might ensure their daily routine includes segments for reflection, movement, healthy meals, and engagement with loved ones. This is not an attempt at perfection, but an acknowledgement that environment shapes cognition. Stoic practice extends to your physical setting, because letting your environment sink into chaos or letting trivial routines eat away your day fosters mental tension. If you find that your living space or schedule is an impediment, piles of clutter, indefinite hours of social media at night, Stoicism suggests taking small steps to restore order, thus freeing your mind for deeper thinking or restful repose. Over weeks, these small steps accumulate, forging a life more conducive to rational inquiry and less weighed down by scattered impulses. That approach complements the Stoic quest to unburden ourselves from illusions or unnecessary stresses, letting reason flourish. We must not forget Stoicism's posture toward fate or chance. Even the most adept thinker can be derailed by sudden tragedy or simply by the random turns of life. High IQ individuals with a Stoic orientation do not interpret these random misfortunes as personal affronts or as proof that all their efforts were in vain. Rather, they quickly adapt, seeing each curveball as another scenario to handle with reason. This fosters a nimbleness, a readiness to pivot that many associate with high intelligence. Yet, Stoicism clarifies that it is not just raw cleverness, but an inner acceptance that life's flux is normal. So we do not cling rigidly to one blueprint if the terrain shifts. We remain anchored in the sphere of what we can control, our judgments, our next steps, while letting go of the illusions that we can guarantee stable external conditions. In doing so, we reduce the panic that arises when plans unravel. Instead, we calmly reevaluate. People who witness that calm might call it genius under pressure, But from a Stoic vantage, it is the fruit of daily practice in relinquishing illusions of total predictability. This shift can revolutionize your experience of stress. If you once melt down at every unforeseen glitch, Stoic acceptance transforms those glitches into signals for resourceful adaptation, maintaining your mental composure and enabling quicker solutions. Another dimension that Stoics share with men of high IQ is the capacity to integrate knowledge from diverse fields, forging holistic understanding. Many bright minds do not confine themselves to a single discipline. They borrow insights from philosophy, science, history, psychology, merging them in fresh ways. Stoicism, with its emphasis on broad reflection and the unity of reason, encourages cross-disciplinary thinking. You might read about ancient wars to glean lessons about human nature, then connect them to modern organizational behavior. You might see patterns in biology that echo Stoic teachings on self-regulation. This integrative habit fosters deeper insight than siloed knowledge. If you apply it, you become the type who can draw analogies from one domain to solve a seemingly unrelated problem in another. That mental cross-pollination is often behind the aha moments that people label as brilliance. From a Stoic lens, it is simply the recognition that truth can appear in manifold forms, and that we benefit from seeing connections rather than divorcing fields. Over time, this approach shapes you into a more versatile thinker, less stressed by complexity because you relish it as an opportunity to unify threads. Lastly, let me speak to how Stoic men handle the ephemeral nature of accolades or public recognition. Some men equate high IQ with awards, titles, or widespread praise, but Stoics caution that such external validation is fleeting. Indeed, many historically recognized geniuses found themselves misunderstood or underappreciated in their own time, only to be lauded posthumously. Stoic teaching insists that tying your worth to applause is precarious. Instead, the real measure is how consistently you apply your reason and moral sense, day after day, whether or not you garner public acclaim. Men of advanced intellect often manifest that Stoic detachment from outer praise. If they receive accolades, they accept them politely, but do not let them corrupt their focus. If they are overlooked, they do not crumble in bitterness. This resilience frees them from the stress that devours many ambitious souls who chase fame or visibility. By internalizing Stoic acceptance, you can remain steadfast in your intellectual pursuits, even if external recognition lags or never arrives. You see your daily growth in clarity as reward enough. That stance, ironically, can eventually lead to recognition, but by then, you treat it as incidental. Freed from the emotional roller coaster of chasing or losing applause, you can steadily refine your gifts. Observers might label it unassuming genius, but from your vantage, it is just the Stoic practice of not letting external metrics define your core. Therefore, as we draw this part to a close, we gather these threads. The synergy between Stoic discipline and advanced intellectual habits emerges in how these men handle adversity, view mistakes, organize their environment, approach learning, channel emotional surges, and remain humble yet open to constant refinement. I invite you to reflect on which of these aspects resonate most keenly with your current life. Is it the daily reflection, filtering out trivial distractions, or calmly pivoting in crises? Whichever area speaks to you, Stoic reinvention can help embed that habit in your routine, turning an abstract aspiration into a living practice. Over weeks and months, you might sense your mind settling, becoming more agile, less shackled by illusions or anxieties, more present for creative or problem-solving endeavors. By the time we move into the next part of our discourse, we will explore how to sustain this Stoic-led transformation over the long run, ensuring that it weaves into each facet of your life, from personal relationships to professional aims, forging not only a sharper intellect, but also a deeper serenity that remains unwavering amid the swirl of modern demands. As I have said before, I speak not from a pedestal, but as one who has seen how certain practices, call them habits, disciplines, or ways of thinking, can enrich a mind until it seems to shine with a clarity that others may label intelligence. We have begun to explore some of these habits: curiosity, the capacity for honest self-correction, a willingness to meet complexity calmly. Now, allow me to walk with you deeper into the moral and practical dimensions of these habits, illustrating how Stoic reflection can help us adopt them or refine them in our daily lives. I remember a time decades ago when I worked alongside a man, let me call him Claudius, who, though not lauded by any academic institution, demonstrated an uncanny ability to break down knotty problems and arrive at elegant solutions. People around him marveled at what they perceived as genius. In quiet conversation, I discovered he was essentially living out a Stoic posture. He recognized that success hinged on focusing his mind where it truly had influence. He dissected the problem structure, tested small assumptions, let go of the stress regarding uncontrollable variables, and calmly iterated forward. He never allowed emotional flurries, anger, impatience, or fear to pollute his reasoning. Nor did he posture as if he had the final word. At each step, he welcomed fresh data, adjusting. It struck me how strongly he paralleled Stoic teachings, even if he had never read a line of Marcus Aurelius or Seneca. And this, I realized, is a core trait among those with advanced mental habits. They funnel their energies into rational, iterative processes rather than letting their mental bandwidth be drained by illusions or anxiety about external results. Now, let me elaborate on a handful of additional habits in that same Stoic spirit. One that stands out is the commitment to consistent, methodical learning. I have noticed that those who sustain a high level of mental acuity year after year do not rely on sporadic bursts of interest. They treat learning as a discipline, much as the Stoics treated virtue. Each day or week, they engage with new material, read challenging works, test out new techniques, or refine old ones. This incremental approach mirrors the Stoic practice of daily reflection. In Stoicism, we remind ourselves each evening to review how we acted or thought, gleaning small corrections. The same logic applies to intellectual growth. If you devote even 30 minutes a day to structured learning, over months you accumulate a body of knowledge that can reshape your entire approach to life. The Stoics would praise that approach, for it does not rely on ephemeral motivation, but on steady, reasoned routine. If you find yourself longing to adopt such a habit, Stoicism suggests you set realistic but firm increments of study, maybe half an hour each morning or 2 focused hours each week, where you free yourself from distractions and humbly engage with something that stretches your mind. Over time, that accumulative effect can drastically sharpen your understanding. Another habit I see among these bright minds is what I might call strategic detachment. They do not get lost in the immediacy of every drama. Rather, they maintain a vantage that looks ahead, that ponders the ripple effects of actions. Stoicism teaches a similar perspective, urging us to consider not just the fleeting impulse, but the longer-term consequences and the moral dimension. If a dispute arises, Stoics do not fixate solely on winning that moment. They step back and ask, what is the just resolution here? How will my actions today shape my future relations or my sense of integrity? This big-picture thinking not only fosters better decisions, but also spares the mind from petty obsessions. If you find yourself frequently entangled in minor quarrels or resentments, Stoicism would nudge you to ask whether these spats matter in the grand tapestry of your life. By scaling your perspective, many trifling sources of stress fade, leaving mental space for more meaningful pursuits, a hallmark of advanced intellect. People might see your calm refusal to be bogged down by trifles as a form of brilliance, but Stoics recognize it as rational self-command, applying cosmic reason to everyday irritations. Yet I would be remiss to ignore the role of emotional intelligence in this conversation. High IQ is often narrowly defined by logic or factual recall, but in practice, those individuals who truly thrive intellectually also navigate the emotional currents of themselves and others with a certain grace. Stoics, far from being unfeeling, emphasize the measured management of passions, anger, fear, envy, so that we do not become their slaves. If you observe a so-called brilliant colleague deftly diffusing interpersonal friction or listening keenly to someone in distress, you are seeing another Stoic principle at work: empathy tempered by rational perspective. This trait can sometimes get overshadowed by the myth that geniuses are aloof, but I have found that genuine brilliance often includes an understanding of human nature and a willingness to connect without succumbing to emotional chaos. Stoicism's counsel is to approach others with benevolence, acknowledging that each person is shaped by circumstances we only partly see. By withholding quick judgment or condemnation, we allow space for constructive engagement. Over time, that approach reduces stress in group settings and fosters a culture of reasoned dialogue. If you adopt it, you might find your environment shifting subtly: less tension, more shared problem-solving, and ironically, a more fertile ground for intellectual synergy. At this juncture, let me recall an example from a friend, an older teacher who taught complex subjects to restless teenagers. Many colleagues avoided such classes, citing the difficulty of controlling the students. Yet this teacher managed to keep a calm, structured environment where advanced concepts flourished. Observers attributed it to his genius for teaching, but stoically considered it was the fruit of daily composure, empathy, and unwavering clarity. He recognized that half his students' misbehavior stemmed from frustration or fear of failure. Instead of scolding them impulsively, he paused, asked questions, offered step-by-step guidance, and displayed genuine patience. This Stoic approach, combining emotional awareness with rational structure, ultimately cultivated an atmosphere where students felt safe to attempt challenging problems. Over time, his classes produced consistently high engagement and performance. That capacity to handle volatile emotions and reorient them toward constructive learning is a prime example of how Stoic-laced mental habits can produce results others call miraculous or genius-level teaching. Meanwhile, the teacher himself confided that he seldom felt stressed by disruptions, having recognized them as part of the domain he could guide but not fully control. If a student refused to cooperate, he let go of illusions that he could force compliance. He simply offered reason and a calm invitation. Freed from battling illusions, he retained his mental energy for the actual teaching. That synergy is precisely what Stoicism can teach any of us, whether we're in a classroom, a workshop, or an office. Let me shift now to the question of how these Stoic-infused habits might help us handle personal crises that test even the sharpest mind. I recall a scenario. A man with strong analytical abilities found himself blindsided by a relationship ending abruptly. His intelligence alone did not save him from emotional turmoil, but Stoicism provided a framework to process the heartbreak. He recognized that while he had no control over his partner's choice to leave, he did control how he interpreted that event and the narrative he told himself. Instead of wallowing in self-blame or anger, he used reflective journaling each night, sifting his regrets, extracting lessons for how he might treat future partners more openly. He practiced negative visualization, imagining life continuing productively even without this relationship. Soon, the initial devastation softened into a quiet acceptance. Freed from illusions that his entire worth hinged on that bond, he channeled his intellect into creative pursuits and personal growth, ironically emerging with a deeper sense of self. That is how Stoic habits can elevate even the emotional side of existence. We do not stifle or deny heartbreak, but we interpret it in a way that fosters clarity and forward motion rather than despair. People might see him bouncing back quickly and call it resilience or mental toughness, but stoically speaking, it is the fruit of a method that helps us remain rationally anchored amid emotional storms. Another pattern among these high IQ individuals, speaking again from a Stoic vantage, is the refusal to let ephemeral success lull them into complacency. The Stoics warn against the sweet poison of external praise or comfort, reminding us that fortune can shift at any moment. Men of advanced thinking rarely rest on past accolades. They keep learning, keep refining, keep testing themselves. Stoicism helps here by reminding us that contentment with what we have does not mean we stop striving to grow intellectually. We can be grateful for our achievements while acknowledging that resting on them might dull our inquisitiveness. This does not mean perpetual dissatisfaction. Rather, it is a balanced posture. I appreciate what I have learned or accomplished, yet I remain open to further refinement, for the cosmos is vast, and each day can teach me something new. If we let ourselves slip into complacency, we risk the slow decay of our mental edge and a creeping boredom that can breed its own form of stress. Stoicism's daily call, "What can I do better today?" counteracts that drift. Over decades, that mindset fosters a sort of perpetual youthfulness of mind, a willingness to adapt that few men maintain if they lack Stoic discipline. Let me also note how Stoic men of keen intellect handle self-doubt. Everyone, no matter how bright, faces moments of imposter syndrome or anxiety about measuring up. Stoicism helps by clarifying that we must not tie our sense of self to ephemeral comparisons with others. Instead, we measure ourselves against our own capacity for reason and moral growth. If you find yourself paralyzed by the thought that others might be more knowledgeable, Stoicism encourages you to do what is within your control. Study more, ask questions, remain honest about your knowledge gaps. Freed from the illusion that you must appear infallible, you realize that admitting ignorance is no shame if it leads to learning. Many intellectually accomplished individuals show that trait. They swiftly say, "I don't know," then proceed to investigate the matter. Stoically, that is a refusal to let pride hamper progress. Instead of letting self-doubt sabotage them, they transform it into fuel for deeper inquiry. Observers might marvel at their calm acceptance of not knowing, but Stoicism clarifies that it is simply rational not to pretend mastery. Over time, by consistently addressing your ignorance rather than hiding it, you strengthen your mental foundation. That is how the loop of Stoic humility fosters genuine intellectual confidence, not the brittle facade that crumbles when tested. Now, I would like to share an illustration from my own journey. Early in my career, I was entrusted with overseeing a complex operation that required technical knowledge beyond my formal background. I felt pangs of inadequacy. What if I were exposed as unqualified? My first instinct was to bluff, to hide my ignorance behind bluster. Then Stoicism spoke to me. Better to face my deficit head-on, to ask co-workers detailed questions, to consult manuals, to test small components methodically. I endured a few raised eyebrows. "Shouldn't you already know this?" But I pressed on calmly. By naming my uncertainties, I found allies who respected my sincerity and offered help. Within a couple of months, I had a functional grasp that allowed me to lead effectively. The stress I initially carried, fear of being unmasked, ebbed away because I no longer needed to maintain a false persona. Instead, I let Stoic honesty guide me. The outcome was not only personal relief, but also a more robust operation, since my team felt empowered to share knowledge openly. That capacity to handle self-doubt stoically, rather than letting it corrode from within, is a repeated motif among men who exhibit strong intellect in real-world contexts. They do not let ego hamper the Stoic principle that we must align with truth, even if it means revealing ignorance or vulnerability. We also see that men of strong intellect show measured perseverance, refusing to drop a pursuit at the first sign of difficulty. Stoicism frames perseverance as a virtue akin to courage. When you attempt something worthwhile, like solving a new puzzle, launching a project, or overhauling a personal habit, adversity inevitably rears up. The Stoics warn that expecting an easy road invites disappointment. The difference between the easily discouraged and the Stoic-minded is that the latter interprets each obstacle as a normal stepping stone, not a dead end. They keep chipping away, seeking partial solutions, gleaning small wins. Over time, that incremental progress accumulates. Observers might label it doggedness or brilliance, but Stoicism clarifies that it is simply moral fortitude manifested in intellectual tasks. We do not scurry off at the slightest barrier. We confront it with reason, adapt, and proceed. If you adopt that perseverance, you transform many insurmountable problems into solvable ones, relieving stress as you prove your ability to handle complexity step by step. Finally, let me address how Stoic reinvention ties all these habits into a coherent identity. Perhaps you stand reading, recognizing that you have never systematically cultivated curiosity, disciplined focus, emotional composure, or daily reflection. You sense that adopting these habits could both sharpen your mind and reduce your stress. Stoicism offers a step-by-step path. Each morning, you might set a small mental objective, like devoting half an hour to a challenging text or tackling a new skill. Each evening, you review, did you remain consistent with your plan, or did distractions intrude? Did you handle a conflict rationally, or did frustration derail you? You do not punish yourself if you fell short. You glean the cause and vow to refine tomorrow. Over weeks, you accumulate a new routine of calm inquiry, methodical problem-solving, and reasoned communication. The illusions that once triggered stress, the need for universal approval, the fear of being discovered incompetent, or the dread of conflict, gradually weaken. In their place arises a steadiness that others might label as intelligence or wisdom. And because Stoicism encourages moral orientation, you do not let this new capacity feed arrogance or detachment. Instead, you remain a quiet presence who fosters clarity in personal and professional realms, reaping the intangible reward of a mind aligned with reason rather than illusions. Thus, we reach the end of our second segment of this extended reflection. We have traversed more of the practical terrain, showing how the Stoic approach animates the habits typically found in men and women who demonstrate advanced mental acuity, bridging adversity, emotional interplay, daily discipline, and humility before new data or mistakes. I hope it encourages you to see that none of these so-called high IQ traits lie beyond your reach, provided you weave them into your Stoic practice. Whether you are forging a new career, re-entering education, managing a team, or simply yearning for a calmer approach to daily life, Stoicism can guide you toward a mental posture that fosters both insight and serenity. In the third part, we shall delve deeper into how these habits fare under more extreme circumstances, unexpected crises, shifting life stages, major conflicts, and how Stoic-laced reasoning remains the backbone that ensures your mind stands firm. For now, consider how you might incorporate even one or two of these Stoic strategies into your immediate routine, and watch how they gradually lighten your stress and brighten your mental vantage in surprising ways. Let us continue then on this lengthy reflection about what I have called the 10 habits commonly seen in those who exhibit a certain rare mental clarity, what some label high IQ. In the earlier parts, I have shared how such habits mirror Stoic principles: curiosity, disciplined focus, calm receptiveness to new data, resilience in the face of adversity, a capacity for rational discourse, and so on. Now, I wish to shift our perspective a bit, examining how these habits fare when life takes unexpected turns, or when we reach certain crossroads that demand a re-evaluation of everything we once assumed. I will speak to you still as an older voice who has tasted joys and weathered sorrows, convinced that no matter your stage in life or the burdens you bear, adopting these ways of thinking can lighten your load and clarify your path, all while keeping your mind alive to possibility. I recall a period in my own life, perhaps in my middle years, when responsibilities piled up: work, family, the beginnings of health concerns, financial complexities. Each day felt like a race against time, and my mind, once agile, began to feel dulled by the relentless pace. In that fog, I noticed that one of the habits truly intelligent individuals maintain is the ability to pause and reflect, even during busy seasons, making time to recenter. Stoicism calls this reflection a kind of mental breathing space, where you step back from the swirl of immediate tasks and ask fundamental questions. Am I aligning with what I value? Am I letting illusions or external pressures drive me astray? Initially, it seemed counterintuitive. When deadlines loom, who has time for introspection? Yet by diligently carving out even 15 minutes at dawn, I discovered that this small Stoic pause gave structure to the rest of my day. It let me see what was truly urgent and what was merely loud, preventing me from scattering my energies on low-value tasks that escalated stress. Over weeks, this simple practice reawakened the sharper mind I feared was lost, enabling me to tackle complexities with a calmer, more purposeful approach. Observers might have said, "You seem more in control," but I knew the secret. Stoic reflection, consistently applied, had restored a measure of clarity to a life that threatened to slip into chaos. A second matter arises when life deals a severe blow, like the sudden loss of employment or the collapse of a long-held plan. Men with advanced intellect, those who have woven Stoic principles into their worldview, do not interpret such blows as final devastations. They see them as turning points that prompt reinvention. In Stoic terms, we accept that external circumstances often stray beyond our grasp. We cannot guarantee job security or stable markets. We can, however, adapt, and those known for high IQ usually exhibit this adaptive agility, quickly recalculating their next steps. A Stoic posture ensures they do not wallow in self-pity or lash out in anger. Instead, they harness negative visualization. Yes, I foresaw that such a downfall might occur. I have prepared contingencies and maintained humility. Freed from illusions that security is permanent, they greet misfortune as a chance to reapply their focus, build new skills, or perhaps pivot toward a more meaningful path. In that sense, adversity becomes an impetus rather than a tombstone. If you wish to follow suit, Stoic reinvention suggests you do not wait for a crisis to cultivate that readiness. You practice partial detachment daily, so that if the tide of fortune ever turns, you have mental bedrock to stand on. People might label you surprisingly resilient or able to bounce back quickly, but behind that resilience is the habit of Stoic reflection, unwavering acceptance, and disciplined action. Now some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club, By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better" every day, so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. Now, let us shift to relationships. How do these high IQ habits show up in personal ties, whether romantic, familial, or friendships? Often we see that men and women with a Stoic-laced intellect navigate conflicts in a measured way. They do not succumb to endless bickering or petty games. Instead, they attempt rational dialogue, seeking to identify the crux of disagreement and propose solutions. Stoicism frames this as rational compassion. You set aside the ego's hunger to always appear right, and instead treat conflict as an opportunity to clarify truths and strengthen bonds. This can greatly reduce the stress many endure in constant quarrels. If you adopt it, you might respond to a spouse's criticism not by defensiveness, but by calmly dissecting the real concern, exploring whether your actions or words truly contributed to a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, you remain anchored in the Stoic vow to speak truthfully and kindly, resisting cheap shots or emotional flare-ups. Over time, that approach fosters mutual respect, often labeled as mature intelligence by those around you, though Stoics might just call it virtue in action. Indeed, the root of many relationship stresses is the refusal to engage calmly, letting pride or wounded feelings reign. By recentering on Stoic composure, you spare yourself the mental drain that unproductive arguments bring, channeling that energy instead into constructive dialogue, which so often strengthens the partnership or friendship. We should also address how these habits interact with creativity and innovation. Some people imagine Stoics as rigid, lacking the spark of creative genius. But the truth is, many advanced thinkers are deeply creative while harnessing Stoic discipline to shape their output. They do not wait for random inspiration to strike. They maintain a routine, respect the process, and accept that not every attempt yields brilliance. Stoics see that ephemeral emotions cannot be forced, but methodical perseverance can still prime the mind for breakthroughs. If you are a writer, for instance, you might schedule daily writing time, stoically ignoring the impulse to wait for the mood. Over weeks, you produce a body of work, refining it with each pass. Observers might call you prolific or unusually productive. But from a Stoic vantage, it is simply the result of consistent application, free from illusions that creativity must be purely spontaneous. Meanwhile, Stoic acceptance helps you endure the inevitable rejections or critiques that come with creative endeavors. You do not crumble at a publisher's or client's disapproval because you realize external reception lies outside your direct domain. You glean what you can, adapt as reason dictates, and press on. This resilience fosters a mental climate that can indeed yield original ideas, since you no longer waste hours in anguish over negative feedback. Another realm, the habit of self-education. High IQ individuals rarely rely on a single degree or certificate to define their intellectual boundaries. They remain lifelong students, branching into new fields or subtopics as curiosity guides them. Stoicism upholds that each day is an opportunity to learn, and that knowledge must remain fluid, ever open to new discoveries. Let's say you work in finance but find yourself intrigued by environmental science. The Stoic approach would say, yes, if it resonates with your rational interest, set aside time to investigate it, perhaps bridging it to your finance background to form novel solutions. That cross-disciplinary exploration is a hallmark of advanced minds who often produce unexpected innovations. Stoicism warns us not to confine ourselves to rigid roles or definitions. If you find yourself longing to explore something new, Stoic reflection says, why not proceed? Fear of looking foolish or of stepping out of your known lane is an illusion that stifles growth. Freed from that illusion, you can expand your mental landscape, gleaning insights that may even circle back to enhance your original domain. Over time, you become a more rounded, agile thinker, able to connect dots that specialized minds might miss. Let me share a personal anecdote. I once grew fascinated by local ecology, though my professional life revolved around logistics. People asked, why study ecology? It's unrelated to your career. Yet Stoicism reminded me that each branch of knowledge can inform a broader worldview. Sure enough, I began drawing parallels between ecological systems and supply chains, noticing patterns of resource flow and feedback loops. This perspective led me to propose more sustainable approaches in my logistics work. Colleagues lauded it as an ingenious leap, but I saw it as merely stoic curiosity bridged with a willingness to see connections across fields. That synergy of knowledge not only enriched me personally, but improved practical outcomes at work. So let me encourage you not to let social constraints or your own preconceived notions limit your explorations. The Stoic principle that we can shape our judgments and direct our attention is your ally here. If your heart stirs at an unexpected subject, follow it rationally, see what it yields, and watch your mind expand in ways that might surprise even you. We must also consider how Stoic men handle the emotional side of learning or tackling big projects. High IQ individuals often face the frustration of slow progress or the mind-numbing process of trial and error. Stoicism helps them remain patient. They do not let the frustration of repeated failure corrode their motivation. Instead, they interpret each mini-failure as data, an indication that a certain approach is flawed, guiding them to refine. If you are building a complex system or unraveling a challenging concept, you might fail repeatedly, but Stoicism frames that struggle as part of the natural route to mastery. You keep your emotions in check, for you know you cannot rush the timeline of genuine understanding. Over time, that calm perseverance leads to a level of expertise that might appear unattainable to those who gave up early, labeling it too hard. Observers again might call your end result genius, but from a Stoic vantage, it's perseverance and rational trial leading to clarity. And in that calm, ironically, you experience less stress, because you are not constantly castigating yourself for each slip. You see each slip as part of the Stoic plan: adapt, refine, carry on. Another subtlety: men of advanced intellect often reflect on how their actions fit into a broader ethical or communal tapestry, a trait that Stoicism encourages wholeheartedly. You do not hoard knowledge or cunning just to further selfish ends. You consider how your decisions impact others, whether you are designing a product, leading a team, or teaching a concept. Stoicism's sense of cosmopolitanism, that we are part of a larger human family, nudges you to use your mental gifts in ways that uplift rather than exploit. This fosters a sense of moral responsibility that can actually lighten stress, because you are not living in tension with your conscience. You sleep better knowing your advanced reasoning serves constructive aims. If, on the other hand, you bent your intellect to manipulative or destructive pursuits, Stoic reflection warns that internal discord will eventually undermine your peace. Many historically brilliant figures who fell into moral corruption ended up tortured by anxiety or found their brilliance overshadowed by ethical scandal. Stoicism would read that as a violation of the rightful purpose of reason, which is to guide us toward virtue and harmony with others. So adopting Stoic reinvention is not just about becoming sharper, but about directing that sharpness responsibly, a path that lowers existential stress and fosters a sense of unity with the communal good. Let me further highlight that Stoic men with heightened intellect often adopt a sense of measured realism about life's unpredictability. Instead of trying to plan every detail, they plan enough to move forward, yet remain flexible. Stoicism teaches that if you cling to rigid scripts, you panic the instant events deviate. But the Stoic man acknowledges that unforeseen variables can arise, technical errors, new competition, personal health shifts, and readies himself mentally, not by living in fear, but by expecting some degree of the unexpected. That stance lessens the shock factor and spares you the meltdown that occurs when carefully laid plans unravel. Instead, you pivot swiftly, reassign resources, consult different experts, or shift your timeline. Observers again might call you unflappable or clever under pressure, but Stoicism explains it as acceptance of life's flux, combined with a resolve to act rationally within that flux. If you adopt that approach in your projects or personal aims, you reduce the crippling anxiety that arises from illusions of total control. Freed from that anxiety, your mental energies remain directed at constructive adaptation, a hallmark of those who consistently flourish intellectually. Moreover, let us not overlook how these Stoic-laced habits impact your personal sense of identity. When you incorporate curiosity, disciplined learning, emotional composure, adaptability, and moral orientation, you cultivate a stable sense of self that does not hinge on ephemeral achievements or social comparisons. If someone else outperforms you in a certain domain, Stoicism reminds you that your worth is not negated. If circumstances bar you from certain accolades, you do not descend into bitterness. Instead, you remain anchored in the knowledge that your day-to-day Stoic practice, living by reason, upholding virtue, refining your mind, constitutes real progress. People might see you as intellectually confident, but Stoicism clarifies it as an internal security derived from focusing on what truly lies within your control. That security spares you from the chronic stress of wondering if you measure up to every external standard. Indeed, many men burden themselves with constant self-doubt or envy because they measure intellect by social applause. Stoicism short-circuits the torment by recentering your sense of value on self-improvement and moral alignment, leaving you content to keep learning without being overshadowed by fleeting metrics. Finally, let me speak about the synergy that can form if you gather with others who share or aspire to these Stoic-laced, high IQ habits. A single individual practicing them can accomplish a fair amount, but if you find or help create a community, maybe a small study group, a professional circle, or an online forum, dedicated to rational debate, mutual feedback, and Stoic calm, the collective potential can multiply. You exchange ideas systematically, correct each other's blind spots, and reinforce positive routines. The Stoic ethos of open-mindedness ensures that debates remain respectful, aiming to refine truths rather than crush opponents. That environment not only fosters more robust thinking in each member, but also lessens the stress that so often plagues competitive or egocentric circles. This synergy can extend to problem-solving in workplaces or community initiatives, where the combined clarity of multiple Stoic-aligned minds leads to solutions that no single frantic intellect could devise alone. If you find yourself lacking such a circle, Stoicism suggests you can start small, gather a few friends or colleagues, commit to a weekly or monthly discussion where you explore a challenging text or a local problem with these Stoic habits: methodical reading, rational discourse, acceptance of differing viewpoints, humility before error. Over time, you form a microcosm that models advanced intellectual collaboration, beneficial to all who partake. Thus, in this second part, we have explored how Stoic reflection can underpin key habits often linked to high intelligence: daily reflection, systematic learning, emotional regulation, humility before data, synergy of knowledge and moral practice, readiness to adapt under adversity, big picture analysis, and fostering supportive networks. We have seen real-life anecdotes of how such habits might look, as well as the Stoic rationale for adopting them. If you stand at a juncture, tired of mental drift, longing for sharper reasoning or deeper calm, these Stoic teachings beckon. Start modestly. Carve out time to read or practice a new skill. Greet obstacles as data for improvement. Remain open to being proven wrong, and take stock each evening in Stoic reflection. Over weeks, you might notice your mind less encumbered by trivial anxieties, more attuned to constructive solutions. People might label you brighter or wiser, but Stoics know it is the fruit of daily discipline, not some innate gift. In short, Stoic reinvention is accessible, bridging the gap between your present patterns and that state of mental clarity you admire in others. At the close of this part, I encourage you to pick one habit that resonates. Maybe it is adopting a deliberate reading schedule, or practicing negative visualization to quell fears of failure, or addressing a conflict at home with Stoic calm. Implement it consistently for a set period, noticing how it recalibrates your stress levels and your mental agility. You need not overhaul your entire life at once. Stoicism embraces incremental growth, trusting that each small improvement paves the way for more profound transformation. In the next and final part, we will gather all these threads into a larger vision of how Stoic-driven habits can weave through the entirety of one's life, shaping not merely intellectual prowess, but also the moral and existential dimensions that ensure such prowess serves a truly human purpose. Now, my friends, we come to the final stretch of our long conversation. Over the previous 3 parts, we have explored how curiosity, disciplined focus, humility before our mistakes, rational discourse, measured time management, empathy balanced by logic, and an acceptance of adversity all play vital roles in shaping a mind that others may call brilliant or high in IQ. We have also seen how these qualities spring from daily practices reminiscent of Stoicism: consistent reflection, negative visualization, a readiness to adapt under stress, and a moral orientation that harnesses intellect for constructive ends. In this concluding portion, I wish to weave everything together into a vision of how these habits can guide us through the broader tapestry of life, through changing seasons, unexpected crises, or the inevitable transformation that comes with age. Let this final segment serve as a kind of roadmap for integrating what we have discussed, ensuring that your pursuit of mental clarity remains not just a phase of self-improvement, but an enduring lifestyle that fosters both intellectual growth and Stoic serenity. To begin, let me remind you that Stoic teachings hold the practice of daily reflection as crucial. If you have begun adopting any of the high IQ habits we outlined, sustained curiosity, methodical learning, calm emotional regulation, chances are you have found them beneficial in specific contexts. But you might worry about sustaining your new routines when life upends your schedule or presents a wave of new obligations. This is precisely where Stoic discipline helps. By preserving a short window each morning or evening for reflection, you keep a gentle grip on your mental trajectory. Perhaps you spend 5 or 10 minutes each morning affirming that you will devote an hour to focused reading or problem solving, free from digital distractions. Or you vow to approach conflicts with rational composure, refusing to waste mental energy on petty arguments. Then each evening you look back. Did I actually hold to that vow? Did I let illusions or impulses derail me? If so, what caused that slip? Over time, this simple practice ensures that old habits do not stealthily reclaim your mind. You guard your Stoic-laced progress from backsliding. In a sense, you become your own mentor, a role that fosters self-reliance and wards off the stress that arises when you sense your good intentions drifting away. Moreover, Stoics often extol the virtue of gratitude. Some might think gratitude is incidental to intellect, but in truth, men and women who carry advanced mental discipline frequently exhibit a grounded appreciation for each day, each resource, each ally that supports their pursuits. Stoicism underscores how fragile and fleeting external goods can be. This does not mean we dismiss them, but we remain thankful for the chance to learn, to reason, to collaborate, and to see the wonders in our environment. Such gratitude tempers the craving for more that can so often beset intelligent individuals. It also reduces envy of others' achievements or possessions, which might otherwise cloud your mind. By savoring what you already have, be it a stable job, a decent library, supportive friends, or simply the health that allows you to keep studying, you free yourself from the mental friction of feeling perpetually inadequate or behind. Over the long run, that sense of fullness grants you a stable platform from which to continue your mental explorations. People might note your positivity, calling it optimism, but Stoics see it as the fruit of rational reflection on what remains within your domain and what blessings you already enjoy. Another theme we must explore here is how Stoic men or women with these advanced intellectual habits handle conflict or moral dilemmas with each other. Suppose you have a group of colleagues, each with strong opinions, possibly each possessing a formidable intellect. Without Stoic grounding, such a gathering might devolve into ego-driven debates, overshadowing the search for truth. But if each participant carries a measure of Stoic reflection, knowing that real knowledge often emerges from calm exchange rather than combative argument, then the group can harness each mind's strengths. This might look like each person presenting their perspective with clarity, but also with a readiness to revise or integrate. The Stoic principle of refusing to see disagreement as personal offense fosters an atmosphere of collaboration. If you adopt such a stance in your circles, you might find that your collective output surpasses what you could do individually. Instead of friction escalating stress, Stoic-laced synergy dissolves tension, forging solutions that reflect multiple insights. Over time, that synergy can produce breakthroughs in a company, a research group, or even a family setting where complex decisions about finances or relocation must be made. Instead of endless bickering, you see Stoic rational discourse at play, guided by mutual respect. This outcome may well appear as if the group is brimming with geniuses, but it is just the alignment of good intellectual habits, openness, rational calm, moral underpinnings shared among participants. In personal life transitions, let us see how these habits play out. Imagine you are shifting from a stable corporate role to launching a small enterprise around your passion. You might feel excitement, but also fear of venturing into unknown territory. High IQ thinkers with Stoic insight approach it systematically. They do research, gather knowledge, craft a reasoned plan. They do not let the swirl of "what if everything fails?" or "what if people think I'm foolish?" sabotage them. They do a Stoic negative visualization of possible setbacks, like struggling for initial customers or facing a financial crunch, and they prepare morally and logistically for that. They keep their stress manageable by acknowledging that success is not guaranteed, but their moral purpose, creating something valuable or pursuing heartfelt work, guides them beyond the fear of external judgment. This clarity, ironically, fosters a better chance of success, as you allocate your mental resources to problem solving rather than panic. And if external fortune denies your enterprise success, Stoicism buffers you, reminding you that your worth lies in the sincerity of effort and alignment with virtue, not in hitting a certain revenue target. Freed from that crippling fear, you can pivot to Plan B if needed, without letting a sense of personal failure crush you. This posture is often described as a hallmark of resourcefulness or brilliance, but from a Stoic vantage, it is simply the discipline of rational acceptance and moral focus. Let me share a short anecdote. A friend of mine decided, in his mid-30s, to open a small woodworking shop, leaving a well-paid but stifling position. The Stoic approach he took was to methodically budget for a lean initial phase, negative visualizing that sales might be slow for months. He embraced simpler living to reduce financial pressure, and each day he applied himself to refining his craft and marketing gently. Some acquaintances gossiped that he was risking ruin, but Stoic calm helped him ignore their dire predictions. He found that not all illusions of easy success held up. Indeed, the first months tested his perseverance, but he remained steady, gradually attracting loyal clients. Observers marveled at how smartly he navigated the transition, yet he insisted it was not raw intellect so much as daily Stoic reflection and acceptance of adversity. He never panicked at a slow week, never boasted in a good one. He simply kept learning, kept rationally adjusting, and over time built a small but stable enterprise that satisfied both his livelihood and his passion. This quiet triumph exemplifies how Stoic-laced intellectual habits, humility, consistent effort, rational planning, ignoring external negativity, can yield a fulfilling reinvention that many might interpret as brilliance, though it is truly about moral and mental discipline. Continuing, we might address a question: do Stoicism and high IQ habits ever conflict? Some might argue that intense curiosity or daring leaps of thought clash with Stoic acceptance. I would say no, they do not conflict when properly understood. Stoicism does not quell curiosity, it grounds it. You can explore bold ideas, but you do not tie your identity to whether these explorations yield immediate success or validation. You can tackle advanced fields or radical solutions, but you remain Stoic in acknowledging that not all experiments bear fruit. If an experiment fails, Stoicism helps you let go gracefully, glean knowledge from the attempt, and preserve your mental clarity for the next endeavor. This synergy fosters an environment where you can attempt big leaps intellectually or creatively without being undone by outcomes. Indeed, some of history's greatest innovators showed a Stoic-like resilience in the face of repeated prototypes failing. People see that resilience as incredible perseverance, but Stoic reflection sees it as the normal outcome of not letting illusions about quick success or immediate acclaim hamper the rational pursuit of a vision. You keep your morale stable because you never assumed fortune guaranteed an easy route. There is also a moral dimension. Stoic men and women of advanced intellect see that knowledge, if used solely for personal vanity or exploitation, corrupts the soul. Stoicism insists that true wisdom is inseparable from virtue. Otherwise, cunning might degrade into trickery that seeds stress and harm. If, for instance, you develop a new technology or discover a powerful method for persuasion, Stoicism would have you weigh the ethical ramifications. Are you using these tools to uplift your community or manipulate them for personal gain? If the latter, Stoic teachings warn that internal dissonance will arise, fueling anxiety. Over the long run, such moral friction can undermine even the keenest mind as guilt or cynicism creeps in. By contrast, if you harness your advanced reasoning or knowledge ethically, you align with nature's call for social harmony, preserving an unburdened conscience. Freed from the stress of clandestine guilt, your mind remains open to further growth. This moral aspect is often overlooked when people talk about high IQ. They focus on the intellect's achievements, ignoring the potential moral costs. Stoicism ensures that your sharper thinking does not degenerate into manipulative cunning, but remains guided by an internal compass that aims for the common good. Now, let me reflect on how Stoic men of advanced intellect handle transitions from youth into middle age and then into older years. In youth, the advanced mind might be full of curiosity, brimming with ambition. Stoicism helps to temper the arrogance that sometimes afflicts bright youth. It reminds you that life can throw curveballs, and that humility and consistent discipline outshine raw potential. In middle age, when responsibilities and external demands peak, Stoicism helps you sustain your mental habits amid the swirl of tasks, urging you to preserve daily reflection, mindful reading, and the Stoic partition of control. That way, you do not get lost in the machine of busyness, letting your mind degrade. Then, as older age approaches, Stoicism helps you gracefully shift from building to mentoring, from direct ambition to sharing wisdom. You realize your mind can remain luminous if you keep up the habits of curiosity, moral action, and readiness to adapt your routines to changing physical or social circumstances. The advanced intellect might no longer be as quick in raw speed, but Stoic perspective compensates with depth and patience. Freed from illusions of permanent youth, you remain engaged in learning, less anxious about decline. Indeed, many older Stoics show an intellectual richness that younger men can only admire, a fruit of decades-long Stoic-laced development. Observers might call them sage-like, but Stoics see it simply as the outcome of unwavering daily mental discipline. Let me share a final anecdote from an older mentor of mine. Let me call him Adrian, who, in his 70s, maintained a rigorous reading habit, a calm presence in community discussions, and a gentle sense of humor that bridged generational gaps. People asked how he remained so mentally fresh, so patient with novices. He confided that each day he spent a short while reviewing Stoic passages and recalling that knowledge is endless, that no man is ever done learning. He did not cling to past laurels or protest that "I'm too old for new concepts." Instead, he made it a point to keep up with emerging fields, at least at a conceptual level, talking to younger professionals who found in him an open mind rather than a condescending elder. The result was a synergy. He offered them historical perspective and moral guidance. They fed him updates on cutting-edge ideas. That Stoic-laced humility, combined with consistent curiosity, sustained a mental vigor that many half his age lacked. He told me plainly that Stoicism shielded him from the illusions of "I already know enough" or "I'm set in my ways." Freed from those illusions, he reveled in mental growth. He described it as a living Stoic principle, to remain a student of life until your final breath. That posture, ironically, gave him a capacity for rational insight that might well be called high IQ, though he never used such a phrase to describe himself. He simply saw it as living in accord with reason, guided by acceptance of fate and a readiness to serve others with his knowledge. And so, dear friends, we see that integrating Stoic insights with advanced intellectual habits fosters a synergy that can, over the decades, produce a mind of rare clarity, a mind that remains resilient under stress, adaptable under shifting fortunes, open to continuous refinement, and ethically grounded to ensure that mental gifts do not become moral liabilities. By adopting consistent daily reflection, negative visualization, humility in the face of error, a reasoned approach to conflict, a structure for ongoing learning, and a readiness to see illusions for what they are, You too can shape your mind in this Stoic-laced manner, reaping both the advantages of sharper problem-solving and the calm sense of identity that Stoicism promotes. As we draw the third part of our lengthy script to a close, let me leave you with a prompt. Ask yourself if you have truly mapped how each day's decisions, what you read, what you watch, how you respond to tension, how you handle success or failure, contributes to your mental development. Stoicism reminds us that we are artisans of our character, forging it through each small choice. If you choose daily habits that reflect curiosity, discipline, empathy, and Stoic composure, you gradually create the mental architecture that others might label brilliant. That brilliance is not ephemeral but stable, for it rests on Stoic foundations that endure adversity. In the final part of this discussion, we will tie all these threads together, how these Stoic-laced high IQ habits can unify to shape a purposeful, balanced life, how to maintain them across new stages or crises, and how their legacy might ripple outward to enrich your community or family. For now, simply hold to the assurance that your mental trajectory is moldable, that Stoic reflection can help you cast off illusions about intelligence being fixed or out of reach, and that each day's Stoic-laced practice leads, step by step, to the clarity of mind you might once have thought the domain of only a gifted few. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.